Hey there, brave fundraisers. Welcome to episode 22 of the Fundraising Bright Spots podcast. My name is Rob Woods, and in case you've not listened before, this is the show for anyone who works in fundraising and who wants ideas for how to raise more money, enjoy their job, and make a bigger difference, even and especially during the pandemic. I know that life may be tough right now for a whole host of reasons, and I really hope you're doing okay in spite of what's going on with the coronavirus. And in today's episode, if your charity's fundraising portfolio includes challenge or sporting events, and you've been wondering how to achieve some income in spite of the lockdown, then I think you're going to find today's episode really helpful. Because today I'm going to share a practical, encouraging interview with Andy Sallnow of Prostate Cancer UK. Andy has been the head of sporting events at the charity for more than 8 years, and during that time, he and his team have grown annual income through events from 700,000 to 4.5 million. So Andy has thought deeply over the last decade about how to do events fundraising effectively. And I know that Andy and his team have been doing certain things very deliberately to adapt and make shrewd decisions as the current pandemic has unfolded. And whether you're also working in a large events team, or if events is just one of the many fundraising issues you're having to juggle right now, I hope you'll find it helpful to hear Andy's advice. In the discussion, we cover various topics, including Andy's tips for how to make virtual events more likely to work, ideas for helping people be more likely to collect and raise sponsorship money, even for an event they did earlier in the year, and how and when to make sound decisions about cancelling any events you're currently planning to run in the autumn. He also explains why charities should not be coy about asking our supporters for help, even at a time that is so difficult for many people. He's very clear that sponsored events are good for the participant as well as for the charity's beneficiaries, and he explains exactly why he feels this way. It's been a real pleasure for me to have the chance to work with Andy over the years. He thinks deeply about how to make events a wonderful experience for his charity's supporters, and he has a practical, positive approach that I've always found inspiring. For me, this conversation was no different, and I hope you find it helpful too.
This episode of the Fundraising Bright Spots podcast is brought to you by the Bright Spot Members Club. As a practical alternative to one-off conferences and courses whose impact can fade all too quickly, the Members Club is an online resource that gives you ongoing access to a whole library of video training courses, monthly coaching webinars and live training events. It's all designed to help you learn, enjoy your job and raise more money. To join the 300 fundraisers already in the club, or just to find out more, go to brightspotfundraising.co.uk.
Andy Sallnow, how are you?
Very good, thank you very much, Rob.
Welcome, Andy, to this episode of the Fundraising Bright Spots podcast. Thank you so much for agreeing to join this interview at fairly short notice. So, to help the listener, you are head of sporting events at Prostate Cancer UK. You've been in that role for at least 8 years, and I'm delighted to be aware that you've achieved fabulous growth through sporting and challenge events at your charity across that time. I've written blogs about those feats you've achieved in the past. For today's interview, obviously a key thing I would like to do is to pick your brains about what you and your team have been doing in the last 6 weeks or so since the pandemic hit in the UK, so that the listener can get some ideas and answers to some of the issues that they are wrestling with. So very recently you were also on a call for the Bright Spot Members Club, and some of the members of our online club were asking you some specific event related questions. So we might come on to a couple of those things they were asking you, because you had some quite interesting, helpful answers that I wanted to share with the podcast audience. So if we could jump into the interview, my first key question is, top line, what has been your approach in the last 4 to 6 weeks in terms of event activity?
The first response has been to make sure that any event that isn't going to be possible to deliver now has been cancelled at a point where we've made the communication really clear to our participants. So the first point when this was all hitting and the reality was emerging that we may well not be able to deliver the events that we planned for April or end of March, April, May and onwards, once that picture was emerging, our participants were already feeling on edge because they've been training for a long time. They've been fundraising for these events. These events hold a special part in their summer. And so we wanted to make sure that as soon as we could, we communicated with them, even if it was the fact that we didn't know anything at the moment, but we were reviewing things to be able to give them the reassurance that we are making a considered choice rather than just the radio silence that you can sometimes have if you haven't got an answer. That was the first thing. So we recognize that throughout all of our strength of our events so far is we've got decent communication tools through primarily Facebook groups for the different events where people are talking to each other quite a lot. We're putting messages into those groups as well. And it's there that we first saw people asking questions kind of right when the crisis was hitting of what's going to be happening, and us being able to respond to those very quickly and say, we haven't got an answer now, but we're going to be able to give you an answer, even if it's no more update in 2 days, and be able to communicate as people rather than this austere look at, for all intents and purposes, we're a robot. We wanted to make sure that we're saying, we know as much as you do at the moment, we're finding out more, this is when we're going to come back to you. So that was the first thing. And then once it was clear that we weren't going to be able to deliver events, so I'll use an example of our London to Amsterdam bike ride that was set to be happening in June. Once it was clear that the balance of probabilities, this wasn't going to happen, and we were then in a position of saying, right, well, we won't be able to deliver in June. We need to make sure that we're communicating this first of all, and then also we can do our best to be able to give people another date in September, which is when we were expecting to be able to deliver it, and we are at the moment, to be able to put that communication out as quickly as possible so people can have that in their mind. And everyone responded very well to that. The second element to it is that over the summer, so now there's this big gap between someone's event taking place, them training, the event that would have taken place and would have happened, and then the new event. And being able to keep people warm in that period is a key job that we've got now, that actually we've seen ourselves play a more important role in than we were expecting to, because now that someone's event's gone, there's this still a need to be able to get active, and actually we're seeing even more people are using their 1-a-day exercise now than they would have in the past. We're seeing that people still have that human need for connection, the connection to be when you're working from home or in one small room like this, to be able to be connected with other people and get a sense of having a relationship with a bigger cohort of people. And then the third element which is just as important now as it ever has been, of making a positive impact. And those people who were already signed up to take part in an event for Prostate Cancer UK, those three things still exist over the summer. So it's up to us, and without us being able to give them the tool, whether it's a Facebook group to connect to people, whether it's a challenge that would be on the same weekend as their event, but would be something they can do in a self-isolated way, so a bike ride they can do on their own, outside or on a turbo trainer, and then be able to celebrate the stories and the connection that people have between their challenges, either doing it live or picking up stories about their challenges afterwards, that we need to do a good job on. So the other thing that we've looked at, it's been a lot easier to be able to get people on the phone, and people have been a lot more keen to chat to us on the phone because they've had fewer distractions, I guess, outside of things. So the chances of someone picking up a phone call, if we were making it during the course of a working day, might be, you might out of 10 calls get 2 people to 2 or 3 people. Through this last 4 weeks, the chances have been 8 out of 10 people have picked up and have been very keen to have that conversation, because it is a break from the norm for whatever else they were doing, whether it's been hundreds of Zoom conversations with work or Zoom conversation with family. Being able to talk about something positive and a challenge they've signed up to, that's been something that they've seen as welcome relief.
So that's really helpful for the listeners to know, because there is understandable concern on the part of charities and fundraisers. Should we be calling people up and bothering people at this time when they could have all kinds of difficult health or economic problems going on in their lives? And your experience has been, when your team make those phone calls, people have been overwhelmingly happy to talk to you. They may or may not still be able to fundraise for you, but they're really happy to talk to you, and many have agreed to carry on supporting.
Definitely. And I think being conscious of the other things that might be happening in that person's life is a way to treat this sensitively. So any one of those calls will be positive, because if on understanding that person is facing challenges that are on the raw edge of this, so they might have family members who are poorly, they might have other responsibilities they've got with their business they weren't expecting. Understanding that, you can still have a great conversation with someone, even if the reality is that person isn't going to be able to take they haven't got any space in their mind for the charity challenge at the moment, the understanding and patience you show with that person will definitely pay off down the line, because you're treating them as a person. And people like fundraising for organizations that have a relationship with people in. So being able to show that person that you understand that actually this isn't going to be the key thing on their mind will still be a good conversation for you. And I'm sure it'll be a respite for that person to be able to take a few moments to have a friendly ear. And then that person, I'm sure, when they're in a position to, would be able to remember that they'd had a great experience from your charity. But for those people who are actually, if the businesses aren't going too badly, the family are doing well, even if they're kind of slightly stir crazy at home, you're offering them an outlet that is an offer. It's not an ask. You're giving them a chance to do something that they want to do. They just might not have the either opportunity, the skills to be able to create something. You'll be able to set something up for them that's as easy as possible for them to do. Or you're inspiring them, even if they aren't going to be willing to do a virtual event over the summer, inspiring them about the new September date that they can then start training for and start looking forward to in the back of their minds.
So you've given them an extra sense of purpose, a reason to try a bit harder and actually do their exercise each day, that if you hadn't had that conversation, if you had only sent an email, they might not yet have committed fully, and then they might have lost the willpower to actually follow through and stay fit with that sense of purpose and that sense of challenge. So we really are helping people to at least make that offer. In terms of other top tips that you and your colleagues have been doing to help make a virtual event more likely to happen and to give it a greater sense of occasion or greater sense of connection, even if actually we're not all in the same park together, we're separate because we can't leave our home. Anything in terms of the software or the apps you use or the recipe you use to make it feel more like a real event and meet our needs in that way? What are some things that you would advise our listeners to include?
In terms of software, so going for cycling and running events, the easiest software to use is the software that people are already signed up to. So on a cyclist and a runner, almost everyone's on Strava. So Strava is a social networking platform that allows you basically to connect a GPS device and then upload your run, ride. I think there are hundreds of other activities, stand up paddleboarding. So creating, if they haven't been created already, a Strava group for your challenge that then people are able to, and you can then designate as the person who creates the group what your weekly totals that you're celebrating are. So you'll have a hierarchy and a leaderboard of either distance traveled, time taken, speed. You could do whatever you want, but having people gathered together in that group is a key thing, because you're able. That's the device that allows people to be able to show everyone else that they've done a 1 hour turbo training session, and then other people can, in that context, say well done to them. And then also that's a great device to share training and have people say well done, you've done a good ride, comment on that. But it's not a great communications platform. So being able to supplement that with a Facebook group that allows people to talk to one another, to share tips on inspiration, tips on exercise to do at home, whatever it might be. And then you, as a charity, to either pick out different examples of what people are doing to be able to inspire other people, or just celebrate on your own. Just say that we've seen this as a great example that other people are using. How about people use this? That I'd say those two, plus email and phone calls. But I think email for the broad stroke updates that you want everyone to have that aren't going to be best placed in so all of the intricacies of how the event is going to be rescheduled, that might be better as a follow-up email after having had the phone call of saying this is what's going to happen. But making sure that you're using them all in a way that they're designed to use. So I think using those four is probably the right way to pick up an event that's been rescheduled, but definitely not just saying, right, well, email is going to be the way to go, because people are very, very quick to be able to disregard emails that don't seem like they're that relevant to them. And I would definitely suggest a phone call to make sure that the email actually ends up being read afterwards anyway.
Mm-hmm. And in a previous conversation, I think it was in the group coaching call you did for our club, you were mentioning that where possible, encouraging people to do something on the same weekend or close to the same date as the real event would have taken place. There's value in that because it keeps things together, and any social media activity amplifies itself rather than things being disparate. Is that correct?
Definitely, and I think as soon as you have an event that you've been training for and fundraising for postponed, even there's a sense of feeling bereft about that event weekend that's been looming so large in your head for such a long time. It feels like there's an emptiness behind it. So being able to try and replace that with some excitement of being able to do something that you're going to have to be slightly more creative in terms of organizing your own route, or if it's a bike ride, or organizing a turbo training session that you might not ordinarily have wanted to do a 2-hour or 3-hour turbo session, but having this mean the difference between you actually getting on the bike and doing it and then being praised for it. That's something we definitely would encourage. And the route to do that is be able to suggest, this is what we'd like you to do. This is what some people are doing. This is what we'd love to be able to suggest that you do. And then in the lead up, when people are committing to it, say, so-and-so's doing 200K on a turbo trainer on this weekend. Do you want to join him, or do you want to do your own kind of thing, or do you want to ride 100K outside? Whatever it is, have an idea of what will work best with that audience. And then in the lead up, celebrate the stories of the people who are doing it, celebrate the impact of those people, that they're already raising funds to be able to support the urgent work that your charity will be doing alongside everyone else's. And then once that event has happened, or even while it's happening, trying to connect people up between live while everyone's halfway through the challenge, 3/4 of the way through. Because if you're doing a challenge on your own in your room, you really want to feel like you're a part of something bigger. And being able to, as a charity, be able to connect all those stories is exactly what people would expect. I was just doing that live. You could do that live on Facebook, and you could actually even have other people sharing their live feed on Facebook using the tools that are free to you. And so all that someone needs to do on Facebook and Instagram to be shared, you just have to accept them, and then you can have their broadcast feed if you wanted to try and chat to a few people in advance who would be happy to do that. That would be a great way to be able to connect people during the event itself. And then, as with all physical events, once an event happens, say on a Sunday, on the Monday, there's a sense of the Monday morning blues kind of entering in, because Monday isn't the same day as this day yesterday, when you're doing an epic thing that pushed your physical limits and you're really, really happy with. Then being able to pick out some of the stories and some of the photos of what people have done. So there's an example of something, not a fundraiser for us, but a guy called Keith who did his own virtual half Ironman in his house, and he did the swim by swimming on effectively swimming on a skateboard. He had his kids, when he was on his bike, spray water on him, and then he did a run around his garden. These kinds of examples of showing people actually they might have wanted to do something significant and pushing their limits, but they felt too inhibited because they didn't imagine exactly how it would work out. Showing them this is what you could do in future to those people who haven't necessarily set up their virtual challenge afterwards, but for those people who've done something on Sunday, absolutely celebrating them and managing to, even if they are going to be planning on doing the postponed event as well, they've kept their fitness going all the way through the summer, and they've still had this great event experience, even if it's a very different one from the one they would have expected to begin with.
It's a great example. And I'm remembering another example you gave of how the London Landmarks event was cancelled, but your team were really proactive and specific in encouraging people who were going to do it to do something virtual. Could you just tell that example so we can get a sense of how that worked out and whether or not many people joined it?
And this is an example of an event that was cancelled only with about a month's notice, and the event organisers came up with the line, the local Landmarks half marathon, and so we supplemented that by promoting that as much as we could to our runners. And this is an event that will happen in the autumn. They just hadn't given us the date at that point, but in that period, people have trained for it.
Sorry, Andy, what date would it have happened?
It would have happened at the end of March, and then it's still TBC in terms of exactly when, but it's likely to be September or October. So it's still happening in the autumn. But at the time that it was cancelled, everyone's training would have pretty much been in the books. They would have done it. So they would still be expecting to do the 21K at the end of March. We encouraged everyone on the Facebook groups, picked out a couple of stories of people who had already talked about their route that they were going to be doing, of their one piece of exercise they're allowed in the day on the event date. And so tried to demonstrate a little bit of buzz in the lead up to that event weekend, that the event wasn't happening, but people were going to be able to do their own local landmark half marathon, even encouraging people to post photos of the landmarks that were going around because they're local to them and the meaning behind them to them. And by picking out some of those stories, we got a decent number of people posting photos because they still wanted to use their daily piece of exercise to express the fact they've been training for a half marathon. So we had a decent number of people take part in the event. There's a virtual event on that Sunday. It wasn't by any stretch everyone who signed up to the event to begin with, but we were expecting through, and then on the Monday we were able to absolutely celebrate those stories of people who did manage to take part and complete the 21k distance on the Sunday. Also encourage people who hadn't done that to be able to do their local landmark half marathon that week. And we're expecting through that, especially bearing in mind that the event is still happening but it's just been postponed, to still hit our income targets that we're expecting for the event, potentially even more, because we already had the runners signed up. So we're not looking to recruit more runners over the summer, but we have already raised more than we would have expected for an event that hadn't happened in March. And so hopefully with the event being rescheduled, we're potentially even going to raise more than we would have otherwise.
Congratulations. And presumably you can apply the various things you did, the recipe for that one, to some other events that you had planned for the spring and summer. And I think you also mentioned that those stories, those assets, those photos, the celebration of the heroes doing that stuff, you're going to be using some of those assets when you communicate to other people, to encourage other people to enjoy doing a virtual thing rather than the real thing. And your sense is that will help with the power of social proof to inspire people that this is still a fun and valuable thing to do.
Absolutely. And I think there's always a positive angle behind this. Looking at the fact that people will still want to push their own limits, they have to keep active, as the government wants us all to keep our exercise up to speed throughout all this. Just being able to give people a few, even if you feel like you've lost all hope and you just want to stay inside, these are some reasons why you wouldn't. These are some tips and some people who hopefully you'll feel inspired by, to know that actually if you go cycling now, it's calmer on the road than it ever has been. There are real sad elements to the C virus, but in terms of exercising, now is a good time to make sure you are exercising. So a few stories, a few points of inspiration that other people who are in the same boat as them have chosen to do will hopefully give people a bit of a positive nudge when it might have been easier otherwise to feel like, actually, fine, I'll just, for the foreseeable future, just stay inside.
And there was one question I thought was interesting that was posed by one of our members in the group coaching call you did for us, to do with an event, a challenge event that her supporters had done. I think it was in February. And obviously some people had raised lots of sponsorship money in advance of the event, but as so often happens, there's quite a few people hadn't raised all of their sponsorship money. So that's always hard, actually, after the event, chasing for that money. And maybe our listeners are in the same boat. She was saying it's harder than ever to reach out to people, apart from anything else. They might have been intending to raise some money by doing a pub quiz or some other mini event. She's finding it hard to seek the sponsorship money for the event that has already happened, and it happened in February before the pandemic hit. And you had a couple of helpful tips, I think. I'd love for you to reshare those to our podcast listeners.
Well, yeah, we spoke about the idea of calling the people who have done a great job, and so this was your call, your idea, Rob, of just, you've got in that event 25 people. You've got a certain number of them who've absolutely smashed their fundraising target. Those calls are ones that will go down very well. To talk to those people about what they've done, how they've managed it, because first of all, they're going to be grateful for the fact that you're calling them to say well done and thank you, and also that you're gathering inspiration from them with their consent to be able to share with other people. So once you've got a few of these calls with a varied potentially list of things that they've done that everyone might be able to do, whether it's a virtual quiz, whether it's a virtual sportif on Zwift, the computer game bike platform that so many people are using at the moment. Once you've had those calls done, you've got a real body of inspiration to be able to use for everyone else. And even though if imagining a minority of people have smashed their target, and the majority might not have, those majorities still want to raise the money. They signed up to a target that they want to be able to achieve. What's stopping them at the moment is either not feeling like it's as relevant, so calling them, these people would definitely put it back onto their agenda, and then calling them being understanding of the other challenges they face in their life, but also giving them inspiration of saying what you could do is organize something that might connect you with other people that you want to do. You want to be able to connect with your family and friends. This gives you an opportunity to do that. This is a tool I'm going to share with you that someone else who you rode with has used, and it's been really successful for them. And so you're offering them a solution to something that might be an issue that they have in terms of not being able to gather people together virtually. This gives you a reason. It gives a reason that's bigger than you because it's for a charity. So it doesn't seem like it's your self-indulgence wanting 50 people to be together for a quiz. And so you're offering them something that is relevant to them and timely, and isn't a chasing call of saying, why haven't you raised money? It's saying, I want to be able to help you to use the tools at your disposal to be able to meet a target that then means something to you, because you want, obviously signed up to this challenge wanting to raise funds to make an impact to our cause. And then I'll be able to tell you this is the impact it's going to make. So it's a positive call you can have with those people who maybe the majority who haven't reached their target just yet. But when you've got something like C virus happening, you are able to focus on a handful of things, and you might just put other things to the back of your mind. There might still be nagging in the back of your mind, but actually by calling someone and saying, this thing that's nagging in the back of your mind could be something that would be a solution for other things that you might otherwise not have considered to be. And then here are the tools that you can use. That would be the way to use the opportunity, I think.
I love that. And I also love that during those 4 or 5 good calls, towards the end, you could ask that person who's done so well of another favour, which is to post some of these victories or the recipe for how they did it into the Facebook group. So that's creating a pull factor, an inspiration for other people in the group, in addition to the more direct communication you, the fundraiser, are doing by phone. So you're setting a context in which others are managing. And I also liked the notion of pulling it back to the difference this money will make to this cause, which may be very different to the current health pandemic, but it's still relevant to people. So if someone's raised £1,600 and you're able to say, congratulations, this is the number of young people through counselling your bike ride will have helped, and they can celebrate and be proud of that online, again, that's going to be pulling people and re-inspiring by the original motivation to do some good. So that extra cause angle, as well as the social proof and making it easier, I think all of those means you're helping people to fulfill their pledge rather than them feel guilty and feel like they're failing at it. I had one more question, which I thought was on many people's minds right now, and again, it was posed in the group, to do with someone who they were to have, I think, a rowing-based event happening in the spring. They took swift action to postpone it till the autumn, and now they're wrestling with issues about at what point do they decide potentially to cancel that event that would happen in September, or not cancel. To help some listeners in a similar boat weigh up how they approach autumn events, how are your team approaching those decisions?
The first thing is whether you've already got participants signed up for the first date and who are also going to be keen on taking part in the postponed date. If you've already got the participants signed up, then you don't have to worry about a recruitment window, because it means all you've got is one risk. You've got the risk of the postponed date not happening. Whereas if you haven't got participants signed up, you've got the risk of, will they sign up in this uncertain period that we're in at the moment? And then also, will the date happen? So if you've already got participants signed up and you've got the postponed date, they're already expecting to take part in that, then the decision is based on probabilities. It's based on, will the event take place, and at what point will I be committed financially? So then just look at the deposit dates that you'd have and try and negotiate as good a date as you can with your suppliers to say that you'd cancel with as shorter time as possible with them, so that once the situation becomes clearer, you'll be able to make a call that is appropriate for your supporters and the suppliers, and no one's left out of the pocket. For our events, that date is in June. For events where you've got participants signed up already, because you don't need a long window to sign people up. You just need to tell them with the appropriate amount of time when the event is going to be cancelled, and that will be cancelled on the basis of government advice at that point, and it will be done at a time that we won't be committing the majority of costs. So we're only committing small deposit costs that we'd be comfortable in the balance of things to lose on the basis of us securing that date in September. And ideally we'd be able to move that deposit onto another date if we're able to or had to in October. But that's the key question. It's going to be a gamble at the moment. It would be a gamble to say it's completely cancelled, because then you're not getting any income from it. It's a gamble at the moment to put deposits down behind September events. But as long as you're putting those deposits down at a point where you're not committing the majority of the money, or you're committing a small amount that you're comfortable with before you have to commit, that's the key thing. If you haven't recruited participants yet, that becomes another risk, and it becomes it's a different kind of kettle of fish. My feeling, if you've not recruited any participants yet for a September event, is it's going to be hard to justify committing costs behind an event, because people aren't, in my experience right now, they're not signing up to events they've not already signed up to.
Yes. So in that respect, it's similar to most areas of fundraising, in which almost all of our chances of income for the charity are coming from existing supporters, not from cold acquisition, not from going to find new major donors or new corporates.
Absolutely.
Andy, thank you so much for making time at short notice for this interview. I think it's really going to help people out there who are wrestling with various event-related issues. I really appreciate it. I hope you're able to stay safe and well. Enjoy this time with your family and with your baby. I look forward to catching up very soon. But for now, thank you and goodbye.
Rob, thank you very much.
So there you have it. I hope you found Andy's advice encouraging. And if you'd like to understand more about Andy's strategy for events growth, I've put all that detail in a mini ebook called Challenge Event Fundraising: How to Survive the Pandemic and Then Grow Income in the Long Term. You can download it for free from brightspot.co.uk/challenge-event-fundraising/. And I'll put that link in the episode notes on the blog and podcast section of my Brightspot fundraising website. And if you found the episode helpful, please do subscribe to the podcast today, so that you don't miss out on any of the other pandemic-defying episodes that we've got lined up. And also, I'd be ever so grateful if you could take just a moment to share it on with your colleagues or on social media. And if you want to get in touch, Andy and I would love to hear from you. We're both on LinkedIn, and on Twitter, Andy is at Andy Sallnow, that's SALLNOW, at Andy Sallnow, and I'm at Woods_Rob. And lastly, thank you so much for listening today. I really appreciate the effort it takes to keep investing in your professional and personal development, especially when you're potentially under much more pressure than normal. And I hope it gave you some ideas and encouragement. So until the next time, please stay safe, and best of luck with all your efforts to help your charity when it's now more important than ever. Goodbye.